Before the podcast starts, we wanted to provide a content warning. We discuss Hogwarts Legacy and the transphobic viewpoints of JK Rowling. As always, timestamps are provided in the description for each news story.
And welcome into the Gaming Discourse. I'm Tyler Frater alongside Richard Day the Cruz.
Hello.
And Chief Engineer Lieutenant Commander Connor Frater.
Hello.
It is Monday, January 30th, 2023. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook at The Gaming Discourse. Go to our YouTube channel, YouTube/Gaming Discourse. We post videos. Patreon.com/The Gaming Discourse. So you can support us for $2, $4, $7, and $10 and get access to our Discord server, early access to videos, your name in the credits, more stuff. I just posted a video, why Half-Life 2 VR is better than Half-Life Alyx. It's something that popped into my head when I played the VR mod for the excellent VR mod for Half-Life 2. And I wanted to turn that into a little essay about why I think Half-Life 2 VR is better in a sense. There's a lot of disclaimers and a lot of stuff to discuss, but go check it out, please. We appreciate it. We have a lot of news to get into, some of it very serious. We've avoided talking about Hogwarts Legacy. We'll talk about it today, and maybe we'll be done with it. We don't know. And we have other stuff as well. People Make Games made a video about Valve, which is very good. But we can talk about what games we've been playing first. Connor,
Yes.
You start us off. Go.
Yeah, I've probably been playing the most complicated game.
Oh, boy.
Which is 5D chess with multiverse time travel.
Okay.
Oh,
That sounds...
Yes, so 5-dimension chess only has 4 dimensions. All right, so it's the X and Y axis on your normal standard chessboard. Then you have time and multiverses.
okay.
Right. Pieces can move through time and multiverses to check the king and other boards because it separates out into multiple boards
Okay.
as you create multiple multiverses.
All right, I get it.
You can also go backwards in time. It gets confusing because the thing I like to say, because this happened like the third or fourth game I played, I put a king into check by putting my queen in a position that put him in check 6 turns ago.
Okay.
He wasn't currently in check.
Right. No, but he just became.
I could use time travel to send my queen back 6 turns and take his piece and take the piece, and the king couldn't move out of that position.
Sounds rad. Okay.
Yeah, it's really brain breaking. It's hard to explain the game without actually playing it or seeing it be played, because the pieces act normally on each individual board, but then can act erratically on time travel and multiverses.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm bad enough at regular chess, so...
Oh, don't worry. You win by accident.
Okay.
You'll figure it out as
Like
you go along.
putting a king into check 6 turns ago. Didn't do that on purpose.
Okay.
I just found it just said checkmate. I'm like, how? And then you click the little icon and it shows you how you did it. I'm like, all right. I am a god. I am the best chess player ever.
Is it just AI or multi?
There is multiplayer. I haven't been that brave yet.
Too smart for my mind.
Oh, it's brain off chess.
Okay. All right.
Richard.
I love it. I played a little more Sonic Frontiers, and I decided that it wasn't for me. Not that it's bad or anything. I think that it I'm old and comparatively to like the young Sonic fans. And so I think it clashes a lot with what I either want or believe Sonic should be. Not that I'm being very like gatekeepy about it, but it's just whiplashy when I'm playing a game that is just kind of essentially a giant, quiet, open field. And there's music, but it's barely there. So it's kind of silent, and it's just awkward and eerie. And I'm moving as fast as I can go, and there's just nothing there. I mean, there's enemies, of course, every now and again. There's railings all over the place, but then I go into the levels, which are very cool, but they move so fast that playing it enough times, I could get it, sure, but it's very like, oh, I messed up. Now I come to a complete stop. Then I have to start up again. Complete stop, start up again. So I was just kind of like, I don't think I have time for this. So I decided to drop it. So I stopped playing that. I did pick up Gears of War 4 like I said I was going to.
Oh, okay.
Because I have not played Gears. I haven't played 4 or 5. And, I played all the other ones and I love them. And I started to play this one. And, man, I like it. I like Gears 4. Playing it, I had that I vocally was like, man, this still is kind of stuck in a specific time, gameplay wise. The way the cover shooter mechanics, and not only that, but just the design of the world. Very big, beefy people, and it's just it's
Unreal Tournament-esque.
Yes, Unreal Tournament. Yes, yeah. It's fun to dive back in there. I kind of dig what they're doing with the story because this takes place X amount of years after the third game when they won, and the Cogs, the faction of the game that was fighting against the Locusts in the first one are kind of fascists now. And I found that really interesting because we forget that there were originally two factions fighting each other and then the Locusts appeared. So it was like, well, who's the good guys at that point? And we don't know because it wasn't told in the game. So,
and the Cog were never really portrayed as good,
right.
Good organization.
They were just kind of like a needed thing.
Yeah, so. You're called a Cog for a reason.
Yeah, it's very on the nose. But yeah, as you're playing through the game, you kind of go to these, I don't want to call them encampments, but they have huge mechs that are just building houses. And it's like, this is where you're going to live, and they're very cookie cutter and stuff like that. I kind of like what they're portraying with some of the characters. I've met up with some past characters already, but I haven't gotten to the, meat. I'm still in Act 1, but I'm on I'm on Act 2, but I'm on Chapter 1 or 2. So there's, I think there's 6 chapters in the game or 6 acts in the game. So that's going good, but slowly. I was playing that until Microsoft did their little developer conference, and they surprised us. Tango Softworks, GameWorks surprised us with Hi-Fi Rush, which I was not attracted to, when I saw the trailer. Not that it didn't look good. It was just knowing what Tango GameWorks has done before, Evil Within 1 and 2, Ghostwire, and Guilt on Google Stadia. It was a huge departure, and I started playing it, and for me, this is a very early Game of the Year contender. There are no contenders right now, but it's a very, right, but it's very early. It is a phenomenal game that came out of nowhere, and I love its style. It is this perfect blend between kind of Japanese anime and American comics style put together. It's one of the most beautiful games I've ever seen animated. It's very fluid and very, very easy on the eyes. The music is it goes hand in hand with the game. Of course, you have to fight to the music. You can fight without it, but you're not going to do as much damage if you were to fight with the beat. And you have a little cat companion who has a pulse coming out of it to kind of remind you of the beat. On top of that, the entire world is moving with the beat as well.
Wow, okay.
So advertisements or I'm kind of in a factory right now, so all the machinery is moving to the beat. So you always have something in the game that is keeping time for you to, execute combos and stuff. The voice acting is excellent, and the humor is really good too. And it's strange because it should not work on paper. It's very, the lines, the script is very, we're getting a lot recently. It's very Marvel, very Joss Whedon, snippy.
Yeah.
It's also, lots of quips. It's also somewhat self-aware. It hasn't fully gone fourth wall, but it's knocking on its door.
Okay.
And I like it about it. I think it works because of the portrayal of the characters, but I also wonder if it works because of perception in the audience's eyes. Because I'll make this example right now, but for instance, obviously the other game that people are talking about is Forspoken, which every single trailer that has been presented has been a very bad trailer and also a very bad demo that we got as well. And everybody only focuses on the script and how terrible it is because it is a game that is realistic. It's taken very seriously. So people have had time to continue talking about this and continue to grow that somewhat negativity around it.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
Hi-Fi Rush, a game no one knew about, came out. Hey, it's free. You could play it right now. Go get it. And everybody plays it, and immediately this game is so great, but it has elements of what the latter game does.
Sure.
just probably
complaints compound complaints.
Yes, yeah. So it's just kind of present. So I do wonder if the excitement and the hype of the game and everybody's enjoyment of it comes from a little bit of that, like, this came out of nowhere. I got it for free. This is great.
I think you're probably onto something there.
Yeah.
And like I saw a tweet about dialogue from Forspoken, and when I played the demo, there was a lot of bad dialogue. So I'm not denying there's bad dialogue in Forspoken, but there was a piece of dialogue that somebody posted to Twitter and was like, "This is a real piece of dialogue," and I listened to it and I was like, "That seems like a fine."
Yeah, and a lot of
that seemed like a funny piece. That actually seemed like a funny piece of dialogue. Her like chain cuff.
Yeah,
like she mocked the way the chain cuff sounded, and the chain cuff mocked the way she sounded and talked. And I was like, that didn't seem like a super awkward, super weird line of dialogue.
Right.
So anyway, it's one of Twitter shouldn't exist.
It's a culture thing. but yeah, no, I love everything about the game, and it's very straightforward, linear. I'm probably going to get through it somewhat quickly. It seems like an 8 to 12 hour game, but I love everything about it so far. But those are the 3 that I am playing this week.
Okay, so we were off last week. In that time, I beat the first Baldur's Gate.
Congrats.
Insane.
Yeah.
Extremely difficult. But I got lucky. I beat it. It's kind of neat because the copy that I have is for the Switch, and it has all of the DLC and Baldur's Gate 2. And as soon as you beat the main villain in Baldur's Gate, the game ends. There's not like you can continue going around. You have to relive the save before fighting him. So the game ends. It goes to the credits. Right after the credits, a cutscene for the first DLC starts, and then it throws you straight into the beginning of the first DLC.
Ooh.
And I thought that was cool.
Yeah.
Because it's sort of like it kind of told you what you've been doing. So you like save the Sword Coast, and then once you save it, you become known as like this hero, and then you team up with the Flaming Fist, which is like a mercenary group / law enforcement agency. And you like help them out with this new enemy that's attacking Baldur's Gate. I thought that was cool. I probably won't play through the DLCs because the DLCs are there's a lot of them, and I kind of want to eventually get to Baldur's Gate 2. And there's other games that I'm currently playing. I finished the Silent Hill 2.
Oh, cool.
I thought it was a really good ending. I thought it was a phenomenal game. I can't say much about it. I got the in water ending, which I think is like the standard ending. It's where you beat the... Okay, first of all, confession, I didn't know that there were multiple Pyramid Heads. I always thought Pyramid Head was one dude. But
because it's apparitions, like, essentially. Like,
so there's 2 of them, or there's multiple of them, but in one boss fight, you fight 2 of them. I had no idea. I always thought Pyramid Head was one guy. So anyway, so you have that boss fight, and then you have like another boss fight soon afterward. And if you get through that boss fight, you get the in water ending, which I thought it was a good ending, an interesting ending. It really lays on the sadness at the end of it when you really start to figure out what happens. I love that Silent Hill. It's surreal. You're not sure what's real. You're not sure what's fake. They talk about the town like it's real, but so many of the characters exist in a space that it's like, this character represents something. This character can't be literally real. You watch a character die and that character reappears. So it's like, okay, what is real? What's not? I think that's all great. And I think it makes for a really, really good game. It touches on some really heavy themes. So as a lot of good horror does. So yeah, breaking news, Silent Hill 2 is one of the best horror games of all time. Yes. Moving, I will eventually get into Silent Hill 3 because I have to get that copy from you from the store for Silent Hill 3.
Oh yeah, I could just.
Okay. And real quick, the 3rd episode of The Last of Us I watched last night is one of the greatest episodes I have ever seen of a television series ever.
Definitely been hearing that.
It brought me to tears. What they changed something pretty big, not a huge deal, but it was really interesting. It made a Bill's character so much more meaningful and thoughtful, and damn, it was good.
I think they made the right move.
Oh yeah,
absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I didn't know about it I didn't know what they were going to do.
No, yeah.
And so they played a trick on you a couple times because they made you think that what happens in the game was going to happen. That doesn't happen. They made you think something else was going to happen. That doesn't happen. And then what actually happens, you kind of see coming, but you're still floored by just how incredible the episode is. And when I sit back and think about it, it's just like, when I think about the best episodes of a TV series, like the best episodes of Game of Thrones, the best episodes of Succession, the best episodes of Severance or whatever, it's always like towards the end, or it's like a build up.
Yes.
But that episode 3 of The Last of Us, literally from the first 15 minutes until the last 15 minutes, it was, and there's not a whole lot of action in this episode. It is a character story. Is just such an incredibly deep, incredibly moving story. I won't spoil anything. If you are not watching The Last of Us, subscribe to HBO Max, wherever it is, do what you can, pirate it, because it's amazing. I don't condone pirating.
But for Nintendo products.
Except for Nintendo. It's a moral good. Okay, anyway, I needed to get that out. And I have started, give me a drum beat, Disco Elysium.
Hey, all right.
I haven't played it in a few days, but I got pretty far into it.
Oh, wow, really?
So I got, where am I at now? Well, I guess I don't know how long the game is. The game seems like it's super long.
Feels like, yeah.
But I'm probably a little more than 20 hours into it.
Wow.
There's
Good chunk, man.
You start off in an area, you have to open up like a bridge to get to a next area.
Yes.
I went to that next area, did some preliminary stuff, and that's where I'm chilling at the moment. I haven't done much more than that. But I have talked to like every single character, followed up all kinds of clues and stuff like that. Disco Elysium is just, it's everything that people say. It's amazing. The dialogue is off the freaking chains. I had no idea how funny it was. I had no idea how funny Disco Elysium was. Probably one of the things that made me laugh the hardest was, so the game begins with your character waking up from a night of drinking and drug. Your character's a drug addict and an alcoholic. And he wakes up and he destroyed his hotel room, because he's staying near the place where a murder took place that he's investigating. You go downstairs, you talk with the hotel bar clerk person, and the person's like, by the way, you owe me $150 for your room. The dialogue options come up. One of them is just, you're under arrest. And I don't know why, it just made me laugh really hard. Damn it, I'm forgetting his name. Kim Kitsuraga.
Oh, yeah.
Is it Kitsuraga? Kitsuragi. Your partner, your detective partner, is just an amazing character.
He's so awesome.
He has this, like, he comes across very stoic, very one note. As you get to know him, though, he's curious about things. He's a little sarcastic. He kind of reminds me of like Spock. He comes across very
sometimes you catch his excitement. Yeah, sometimes you catch excitement.
But he has these little moments. There's a moment where you're going through like an abandoned business building, and in there is it's like a business that was, it's kind of weird, but it's essentially an abandoned like game development studio. And your partner, Kim, he tries to keep you on the case, because the character that you play as, you can mold them in a lot of ways, but your character is sort of a curious, weird character. I think no matter how you change the dialogue. So Kim kind of knows that he'll go off on tangents. Harry is his name, that he'll go off on tangents, that he'll start talking about things that don't matter. And every now and then he'll say, "Officer, I think we need to refocus on the case," or whatever. But every now and then, Kim sort of goes off on these tangents with you. And one of those moments is when you're in this old game development studio, and he's like, "I wonder what this is over here. I wonder if they were doing this." And you can tell that there's like a little spark in him, that he's kind of interested in this little piece of the world. And it's such a joy to get to know that character better. But of course, the game just smacks you in the face with, it's about labor, it's about capital, it's about just corporatism. It's the politics are just right there.
Yeah.
and it's gonna do whatever the fuck it wants to do with it, and it doesn't care what you think.
Such a good game.
Yeah, it's
one of my favorite parts that is the with the dock boss before you open up the bridge.
Yes, who is an insane racist.
Oh, absolutely, yes. No, but the mental gymnastic boss fight you have with him, like it was such like a really well played out like scene, and if you aren't good enough by then, like man, you get screwed.
And I
so
got around
badly.
him without talking to him.
Oh,
I found
awesome.
a different way around. So it's like
Right.
it has all these different ways of solving things, and I got around him. But one of the creepy... So I think a lot of times in games, and really in anything, how like racism is written is really like Saturday morning racism, right?
Very blunt. Very.
But the racism in Disco Elysium is creepy because it's like it's real. This is how racists actually think. They have... And we're going to talk about some bigotry in a bit. They have underlying logic, as faulty as it is, to their beliefs. And so when you talk to like that guy, he's not just, I believe I'm the best because I'm huge and muscly. He has like racial theory that he'll just talk about. And to write that is, I feel like to write that kind of dialogue, you have to understand bigotry on a level that is not fun to research. And I really appreciate that. I appreciate that the game, it's not necessarily quote unquote realistic. It just it presents an image of bigotry, of classism that is more nuanced than just they're just an evil person, right? And in that you find something even more evil, because you find the politics of it, and then it gets super ugly, and you kind of see the real ugliness of humanity. But man, the game is good. And I played it a lot, and I had to take a break because the dialogue is amazing, but sometimes it's just like, the game will describe a table, and it's just like 2 sentences.
I'm now invested in this table's life.
Exactly. And it's just like, all you do is describe a table, and... So it's like every now and then I've had to... The narrator is amazing.
So which is great that you're playing this version, because I think the original version didn't have the narrator.
Okay,
there
that's a big deal.
There was no voiceover
because
as far as I was aware.
The entire game, it's basically a visual novel. It's almost a point and click adventure game. Almost.
Yes, almost.
Just with really heavy RPG mechanics. But yeah, I'm really enjoying it. And I'll dig into it some more. I think that's all I want to. Connor, I'm sorry.
I was going to say, you were able to beat the boss that I wasn't able to on Switch. One conversation.
Because is that the place you got stuck at?
Well, okay, so I leave the conversation, but I don't gain control of the characters.
Oh, that sucks. Okay.
Mm-hmm. And it's, I haven't checked on it in a bit, but it was a well-documented bug. It hadn't been patched on Switch.
Man, I don't know. You can't back up your saves on Switch, can you? Because I was going to say maybe try.
No,
but if you delete the game and reinstall it,
yeah,
I don't think it'll delete the saves. I don't know. Well, I'm sorry, because that sucks. Because that's like the big quote unquote boss fight. It's not really a boss fight. Could be a fight.
Well, it's before that.
Well, I'm just saying.
Oh, okay.
He's like the first big obstacle.
The conversation that is bugged is well before that.
Okay. Yeah. But anyway, so okay, are we ready to hit the news? Let's hit that news. Hit the ad. Thanks for listening. If you like our content, please consider subscribing or leaving a like and comment. You can find us at patreon.com/thegamingdiscourse. And our tiers are $2, $4, $7, and $10 and include getting your name in the video credits, early access, and access to our Discord server. Okay, so we're gonna talk about Hogwarts Legacy. It's a story. We've kind of avoided it, but I feel like it's gonna release in about a month, and we try and talk about games on the show, and so I don't want to just ignore it because I feel like that would be doing something wrong. What sort of spurred the new discussion about the game was that ResetEra banned all discussion of the game on their forums. ResetEra, a popular video game discussion.
Yeah, one of the biggest.
One of the discussion forum. So some background here, and we can't get super duper into the details because one, I'm not necessarily an expert on a lot of this stuff. There's going to be a couple videos in the description. I highly recommend watching those videos. One by a YouTuber called Contrapoints, one by a YouTuber called Shaun. They're both extremely informative, extremely explanatory, really, really good. Highly, because I'm not going to do this justice, but I highly recommend checking those out if you have the time. So some background. In recent years, JK Rowling, who's the author of the Harry Potter books, has come out sided with people known as TERFs. This means trans exclusionary radical feminists. And I think a really simplistic explanation of this, and again, you want a more like academic understanding, go watch the videos, is essentially feminists who do not believe that trans women are actual women and that there are other underlying often predatory reasons for them trying to transition, whether it's getting closer to women. The movie Psycho is sometimes seen as has sort of a transphobic underline to it because it's about a guy who dresses as a woman and then gets close to women and kills them, right? There's a couple movies like that. But ResetEra banned all discussion. I need to find... okay. Starting with a statement by the general manager, who just goes by B Dubs, saying, quote, "After continued internal discussion, we began to start outlining the issues put forth by Rowling and the game in question, and each time, as we discussed it all, we kept coming back to the simple fact that Rowling is not only a bigot, but is actively pushing, in her position as a wealthy and famous individual, for legislation that will hurt trans people, that she uses the influence and money gained from her success with Harry Potter to push transphobic legislation. Therefore, the mod team has decided to expand our prior ban on promotion for the Hogwarts game to include the game itself," end quote. Again, go check out those videos. Okay, so this makes me uncomfortable because this is some really dark stuff. It brings up a lot of questions about, like, you know, the ethic, boycotting, the ethics of giving money to certain people, how much political power they have, and then like what exactly is happening, because I think there are so many layers of like complexity here that are buried under confusing Twitter threads and drama and stuff like that I think for the average person it's kind of hard to understand sometimes what's going on. But if you're somebody who thinks trans people are just crazy or that they just want attention, I can't convince you of anything. Like if you're there, fine. If you're somebody who just doesn't understand, but you don't have a problem with it, but you just don't understand, what I can tell you is that the people that she has allied herself with are people that believe even if someone is happily transitioned, even people who have happily transitioned should not exist, are people that believe and have said what we need to do is make fun of people that transition, make fun of the idea of transitioning, because if we mock it, then it becomes uncool. So the idea is like, if we ridicule it enough, people won't want to do it. And I think that's horrible because trans people have existed for a long time. Gay people have existed for a long time. Imagine saying if we make fun of gay people enough, they'll stop being gay. But the problem is they won't stop being gay. They'll stop being open about it. But there's still going to be gay people. That's just humanity. And that's really dark because that gets into like, you know, I read some places where people make fun of the idea that like, because Jim Sterling has said this about something different, but about they bring up the word genocide, right? Jim Sterling will say that there are politicians that advocate for genocidal legislation. People roll their eyes at that. But in my mind, it's like, well, what else is it? If you're pushing for politics and legislation that is to stop a group of people from existing, to not give them health care, like what else could it be called, right? So people make fun of that and they roll their eyes, but at the same time, it's like, but that's what they're doing, right? They may not have the they may not have the presidency under their political hands, but that they don't necessarily need that to make change. So so if you're someone that doesn't know, I hope I kind of did a decent explanation there. But again, I recommend checking out the videos. You guys can take the floor if you have piece you want to say.
Go ahead.
No, I kind of want to go to the point of like, I can understand the decision to ban all discussion on the forum about this game, or at least the air surrounding it. But because I too would want to just kind of like, no, this is only going to fuel something else. Like, this is only going to fuel either rhetoric or whatever. It can devolve into hate conversations, especially when we're dealing with anonymity and forums, and already the viewpoint that people have on gamers as well.
Sure.
But it also kind of, I have this other half of me that's like, well, is it also a good idea to ban this discussion? Because like you just made, like the point you just made, what if there is somebody who doesn't know the difference?
Yeah.
What if there is somebody who needs to know?
Because it is super complicated.
And I
think the average person just...
Right, yeah. And I think there are just as many people as there are to spout negativity, there are just as many people to spout positivity and truth. And they're always at heads. So I completely get the mods at ResetEra for having to do this, but I don't... It's hard to tell if it will be good or not. And Rowling sucks, of course. Unfortunately, a large chunk of the world that she built is very cool, and that's what people like about it.
Mm-hmm.
They don't like all the other, they don't like the other stuff, but people are going to buy this game because they want that cool piece of that world that they want to experience in a fully fledged, like, digital world, unlike they did back in 2000 on the PlayStation. Like, it was just a really dumb game. But and I understand wanting to not give this person money, and I'm not trying to excuse anything, but there is someone else bigger than her is a problem as well. As far as like she may be, of course, filtering money to legislation and stuff like that, but what about people who are already in points of power who are also doing that same thing?
Sure, yeah.
Sure, you can stop her. It's a Hydra. Cut off head.
Yep.
Another one spouts out. So, and it's not saying don't do anything. Like, you have the right to speak up, obviously. Pick your battles, I guess.
Yeah, and this is where a lot of my uncomfortability sprouts from, because I've always held the opinion that I can't just... In my mind, I can't justifiably tell somebody that they can't do a specific thing with their money when it comes to things that have degrees of like separation, right?
Right.
If you're donating money directly to a politician who's homophobic, I feel justified in saying that's wrong.
Yes.
But if you're buying a video game, a fraction of that money is going to a publisher, a fraction of it is going to a developer. Then, so there's so many layers of like abstraction between that money being entered onto the PlayStation Store and then enabling JK Rowling, right? And there's enough abstraction there that I don't feel justified in pointing fingers and saying, you can't do this. Now, ResetEra is their own thing. Yeah. In the United States of America, and I think this is the way it ought to be, if you own something, if it's not government related, you should be able to decide. And we've decided on this show, right? We've kind of avoided it. We haven't really talked about it. We're talking about it now. Maybe we'll talk about it again. So it's like, I have no problem with what they did. I think that's fine because they came to their own conclusions. Yeah. But yeah, I don't know if I also don't know if it's the right one though. You know? Does that make sense?
Yes. Yeah.
And it's not because I disagree with it. It's just because I literally don't know if that's really how you should handle it.
Right.
But again, I'm sure they had those internal discussions and that's what they came to. Connor, you look like you wanted to speak.
There's a lot with this.
Yes.
All right, so blanket statement, trans covers a huge...
Yeah, sure. And that's why I wanted to say not an expert.
Yeah, it includes people who are trans women, trans men, includes non-binary people. It's people who are not the gender that they were assigned at birth. They are exploring other options, becoming other options there. So I fall under the trans umbrella.
Sure.
A lot of the arguments, one that you just made, of, on boycotts is it's a really troubling subject of, we shouldn't necessarily, it's only a fraction. Yes, but it's still funding the political discourse that is anti-trans.
Mm-hmm.
If a game comes out and it turns out that one of the writers for the game is heavily neo-Nazi, that game is going to get shut down. And people are going to understand, because that's a very terrible thing. People are going to, obviously certain groups are going to try to preserve the game. But I think the conversation of that game does become, all right, we can't, support this game because it supports fascist and neo-Nazi ideas. That's where it's at for the trans community. We really have to put this down, because it literally is situations where it does come down to life and death. And with people sitting on the fence, giving it leeway, that's dangerous, because it does start to go into dangerous territories. Now, yes, it's a fraction, but again, every cent towards those ideas is bad. And people are going to buy the game. People who are trans are going to buy the game because they love the Harry Potter universe. So it's difficult to come at this from any angle where it is good, because there's no good angle for this. To go on to what ResetEra did, for needing places to learn about this for people who don't know. I personally don't think public open forums are great places for learning,
Sure.
especially online.
Yeah,
because it's just
also,
flame wars.
Always.
Yeah, and that's a flame war is never good for any intelligent conversation. It just degrades to base insults.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know where else I'm trying to go with this.
I'm not on ResetEra. I'm not on forums in general. I'm not on social media in general. Yeah. So I couldn't tell you the quality of discussion on there. But it is a prominent forum, which is sort of the impetus.
And you were right, especially with the audience that ResetEra provides. Like I mentioned, there's going to be a lot of people who aren't going to provide very good opinions on the situation. I guess I have a little faith that there will be some people who will be able to say something, even if they aren't able to change the course of the conversation on these forums. And I hope that whoever reads it would like to side with, the folks who make sense. But the smaller minority will make a bigger splash. Unfortunately, the smaller, louder minority.
Yeah. I think I've said all I want to say. So, are we good?
Yeah, I'm fine.
Yeah. Okay, we'll move on. People Make Games made a video about Valve. We're going to talk about that now. It's called A Fearless Adventure or Lord of the Flies Working at Valve. It's very good. 16 interviews with former/current employees. Investigates Valve's workplace culture, specifically Valve's flat, no bosses environment, although it does have a board of directors. Valve's hiring and firing process, how it's handled content moderation, Valve's lack of diversity, and how it's handled certain things with politics and making political statements and stuff like that. Some people loved working at Valve. They said it was a great place. Some people say the power at Valve is not actually flat, and that bias and a lack of diversity have gotten in the way of the company being better. Valve uses something called stack ranking to determine your annual salary. Stack ranking is where employees, we'll skip the details here, but basically employees rank each other based on job performance, and then that determines how much you are paid for the next year. This has all kinds of implications, all kinds of issues.
leaderboard.
Go watch the
Right.
video because we're not going to get into the details. But the point is that there's this variable. They're not the only company to use this either. Other companies have used it in the past. But there's this like variable, different way of assigning of like a pay scale. While speaking about stack ranking, one source said, "quote, I think it's very easy for people who work well inside these systems to brush aside concerns about them, because it's true that for a lot of people, if they have a certain type of personality, they probably are doing very well. It's not apparent to them the effect it has on people who have a different psychological profile or a different level of perceived security within the company," end quote. On diversity, sources say that Valve is not explicitly racist, sexist, or anything like that. There is just a bias that pervades its culture, which I think is true about maybe society in general. Quote, imagine if you've been in positions of power since 2000 and you've never really had to be accountable to anyone other than your coworkers that always look like you and think like you, and you've been extremely financially successful. You've become extremely conservative and risk averse without understanding that's what you've become. You've constructed all these ways to justify that you're just saying the status quo is fine because it's comfortable, end quote. I thought the video was excellent. I thought it was a phenomenal look at Valve. Richard, you're smiling.
No, yeah, I am. No, you can keep.
No.
I'm smiling because a couple of years ago, I think it was a couple of years ago, late 2000s, early. No, that was more than a couple of years ago. We'll say around a decade ago. I heard somewhere that like Gabe is libertarian.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah,
and I mean, I just heard it, but like seeing this video, I was just kind of like, yeah, all right, that sounds like it. It's just, and it's just very weird. Like, it's the for who watches The Watchmen. It's how are you? Who decides what to work on? Like, who decides like what gets done? Like, there's lots of ideas thrown around when there's no singular person to rally them. Which they did say in the video that there are people who have like managerial personalities and are good at it, but there are also some who have that who are bad at it.
Yeah, because Valve wants to hire senior managers,
right,
senior directors, whatever. Yeah. That's kind of the idea. They don't want junior entry level position.
But it is very weird to hear that's kind of how they run things over there. Which, of course, obviously we've seen running it the normal way isn't very good either.
Isn't great either. Yeah,
so,
yeah.
But this sounds like it explains why Valve can generally never get anything out. And I know I keep talking about the games that they're making rather than like what's going on inside, but it was a very interesting look to see what goes on in Valve, because they're very secretive, somewhat. Sure. So,
and I think they benefit from that mystique a little bit. Mm-hmm. My big takeaway is to the question, why does Valve work?
Yeah.
And then the real question is, does it actually work? Because I think if you look at Valve, if Valve did today what they do in 2004, there'd be an uprising, because Valve forced Steam onto everybody.
Yes.
You had to have Steam to play Half-Life 2, if I remember correctly, right? Mm-hmm. Now, they did not force everybody to put their games on Steam, but Valve was the first the first major popular like PC games market, right?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
And they did it with Half-Life 2. And then later on, a few years in the future, when you bought games and you put them into your disk drive, Steam is launching.
Yes.
Even though it's a game from THQ or something like that, right? So I remember Company of Heroes. You put the disc in and you have to install Steam. And it's like, wait, what? This is a video game. What's Steam? What's this other thing? So Valve consolidated the market and they got in before anybody else. And they essentially had like a 10-year head start making a storefront. Mm-hmm. And then that set a bunch of people into Steam, and that got a bunch of people habitually hooked on Steam. And then years later, when other companies tried to do it, they couldn't because it's difficult. They didn't want to spend the resources on it. Valve already has it. It's the only thing Valve really does. At least from a like year by year basis. And so it was just easier to do that. So like if Valve hadn't done that, if they're trying to make Steam today or even 10 years ago, would how their their workplace culture works actually work, or is it just a product of, I this is a tortured metaphor. I wrote it down, but it's like crediting a race car driver for being a brilliant race car driver, and his philosophy about driving race cars is brilliant, and ignoring the fact that he started the race like 10 years before anybody else.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, is he really that great, or did he just start first?
Right. And reap
that
the benefits.
Success has sort of propped them up, Yeah. I think that's a really fascinating question. And this is all important because Valve is one of the most powerful companies in gaming. And we're partially lucky that they haven't decided to lean into like cryptocurrency and shit like that.
Oh, yeah.
Because it could very quickly become a dystopia.
But that's also a problem that Valve has because of the way it's ran. It's addressing very major issues, and not enough ample time. Like they kind of just let things fester. And that's still going on like to this day. You can look at all the...
There's some horrible games.
Yeah, you can look at all the like crazy games that get released for $1, $2 just, that are asset flips, all the gambling games with CSGO and whatever else they have on there. Of course, they talked about the Black Lives Matter movement and how like they didn't stand or make any sort of
Valve
statements.
Was very non-committal as a company.
Yeah.
There was internal discussions, a lot of heated internal discussions,
right.
but
and then of course their recent, I think within the last year, 2 years, their recent kind of acceptance of adult games on Steam and the subsequent like unfiltering of them. It was just wild, but but yeah, no, I don't know. It's very weird. It's very interesting, and it's surprising that it's still standing. But that might just be, I forgot the example or the phrase, but it's just something you can't. Still, like it runs autonomously now because of its position.
Yeah, I don't know if I necessarily agree with that, because Valve. So okay, Valve works, I think, because it was essentially the first people to do what they did.
Right.
Today, if they did that, they'd be super unpopular. Epic did essentially what Valve did. In a sense, right? It wasn't that different.
Right.
And people act like Epic is the worst thing on earth. Now, I'm not defending Epic. I don't think Epic is the best thing on earth by a long shot. But it's not like what Epic tried was far and away this different from something that Valve did. And Valve is this super egalitarian. That's just not true, right? So I think they're a product of being in the right place at the right time, right? As G-Man tells Gordon Freeman, the wrong men in the right place can make all the difference, right? So right people at the right time. But once the Gabe Newells, once those people exit, who's going to take over, and what are the goals of those people? So PC gaming in 20 years, Gabe Newell's not going to be around forever. Maybe he retires, whatever. Maybe he just exit the business. I think Valve right now, they do a lot of stuff extremely poorly. They do a lot of stuff well, but I don't think it's like dystopian bad.
Right.
But it would be very easy for somebody like Bobby Kotick to strut in, or Jim Ryan, or some asshole Activision CEO, and all of a sudden their idea of how Steam should be ran is very different. And the PC marketplace gets incredibly more consumer unfriendly because one person with dumb ideas gets in that,
right?
Because there's no like, the decision making process is very, I guess, somewhat democratic at Valve. So does that make sense? Because all it takes is a couple people that decide, a couple people that we all really dislike to decide we're going to do it this way, and Steam is ruined. Like way worse, and the problems become way worse than they are now.
That's true.
And that's kind of scary about Valve.
It is, yeah. But also, it's one of those we don't. If that does happen, when it's gonna happen out of nowhere,
Yeah,
like,
and maybe it'll never
know.
happen. I don't know. Maybe I don't. But I don't think it's like conspiracy theory level ideas there.
Right.
I think it's a total possibility.
Plausible,
I think you can look at like what with Xbox.
Yeah. Xbox
One was a joke. Don Matrick, joke, right? And then they go a different way. Phil Spencer. I don't know if it's necessarily his. It was him that, obviously it probably wasn't just him, But the idea is different people came in, took the company a different direction. Xbox is in a much better spot than they were in 2012, right? Although not a perfect spot, but a better spot than they were in 2013, 14. So people with sucky ideas can come in, make the company sucky, and all of a sudden the industry gets sucky. And that's a huge problem.
Yeah.
And Xbox and PlayStation have a lot of power, but I think relative to the PC market, nobody in any console has anywhere near the power that Steam has with the PC storefront. No. It is, I mean, I don't know the financials off the top of my head, but there is no way that Epic or GOG are, whether they're 2-3 or 3-2, anywhere close to Steam, right? They're competitive maybe, but I don't think they're anywhere close to Steam. Whereas Xbox, PlayStation, Nintendo, they're at each other's throats all the time.
Right.
I just don't get the same sense from Valve. One thing you could say is a 30-70 split. 30-70 split has been the same for a long time. Like at what point does Valve have enough capital that taking that 30-70 split is actively hurting the industry? I think that's a really interesting question to ask. And because of the position Valve is in, they don't have to answer those questions because they're so extremely powerful, right? Yeah. But again, are they powerful because they work, or are they powerful because they were in the right place at the right time? And I tend to think it's more right place, right time, although a lot of the stuff they do at Valve sounds great. I don't know. At least it was kind of a breath of fresh air because there was a lot of stuff at Valve that was problematic, but at least it wasn't like Activision Blizzard shit. At least it wasn't like rampant harassment. So it was like, oh God, what's going on at Valve? Oh, okay, this is really bad and problematic, but it's quaint almost compared to like freaking Yves Guillemot over at Ubisoft. Anyway, so fascinating video, really good. We're getting to the point now where every time people make games, do a video, we just have to talk about it because the work they do is just freaking, it's just really good. Did you have anything you want to say about Valve, Connor?
No.
All right. Richard, what's going on in Washington Post?
Washington Post has closed its launcher, what do you call it? Column? No? Area?
It's like a section.
Whatever, section, yeah. Launcher was one of the few mainstream outlets that was dedicated to covering video games. We've had some of their stories on our podcast. But they have closed it, and the Washington Post Guild said on Twitter, quote, "We have received no clear explanation for why these layoffs had to happen. As far as we can tell, they are not financially necessary or rooted in any coherent business plan from our publisher, who has said that he expects the company to be larger a year from now. We'll continue to hold the company accountable and fight these seemingly arbitrary terminations in every way we can, including helping our colleagues find other jobs within the newsroom and securing the severance packages they deserve."
I think it's a sucky move.
Of course.
Because the launcher was doing great goddamn work. I think the reason that they cut it, and maybe this opinion is just, me blowing smoke, but I feel like it's because video games make a ton of money, and a big chunk of that money is little kids drooling in front of a TV buying V-Bucks.
True.
That's too cynical. There's also 30-year-olds drooling in front of TVs buying V-Bucks, and parents that don't care. And so a huge swath of money is coming from that. And I think nobody in positions of like influence or power really understands the industry at this point.
Right.
Maybe the closest person is AOC. Yeah. But even that
50 plus years in, they still don't understand.
Streamed once, but I don't know. He doesn't even know, Yeah. So the point I'm trying to get here is video games make a ton of money, but I think the way in which the industry makes money is like separated somehow from larger mainstream discussions. Like as opposed to something like sports, where you have, politicians who will disingenuously wear a Cowboys hat or some shit to appear more personable.
Right.
Because it's just, look at me, I'm a Cowboys fan, and politicians are more likely to do that than they are to look at me, I'm playing video games. So does that make sense?
Yeah,
because I think there's something there.
That does, which is strange because in 10 years, the 40-year-olds who grew up on NES and SNES will now be, of course, obviously in their 50s, getting older, but the large majority of people who are alive are experiencing video games consistently, have played video games growing up and will want some place to either get their entertainment or their news.
Yeah.
So the shuttering of a position like this is very weird. Going back to
It's frustrating.
Yeah. Going back to I tell people at work, because they come in all the time and they go, GameStop doesn't carry these old games anymore. Why not? And I have to tell them, because that's not what's making money. Like, new games are making money. We report on the numbers every month. We can tell you billions of dollars, billions and billions of dollars, and way more than movies, way more than music. It's a huge industry. And the fact that, like I've said, 50 plus years in, media outlets and older folks are still ignoring it like this is insane.
Yeah.
Because they still think it's for children.
Sure, and there could be that. There's social stigma. I think just people don't play video games. Like, right. I know how that sounds. I know that sounds gamer.tm on Twitter.
No, you're right.
But I think the essence of it is correct.
Yes.
Is that people just don't play video games. Yes. We'll get a column every now and then about a guy who plays Call of Duty and says this proves games are art, and it's like okay, right. We've had this like games have been art since the first video game.
Yes.
How is it that this proves anything? And there's no way in hell that person played Red Dead Redemption and said this isn't art, and then 10 years later Call of Duty finally convinced them that video games are an art form. Yeah. And the reason that person says that is just because they haven't played a video game and then they played Call of Duty, decided to tweet something out about it. So it's like, and that, I think that's emblematic of the entire thing. I remember I used to listen to a sports radio show, and occasionally they would talk about their memories playing old sports games.
Yeah. And
I remember one time they were having a discussion about like, it was just offhand before a commercial break. Like, man, do you play video games anymore? And he was like, no, I don't have time. I don't have time to play video games. How would you find? And then you could tell that they didn't even have like a conception of what it would be like. And I tweeted one of them saying, it's just like watching a Netflix show. You spend 10 hours watching a Netflix show. Mm-hmm. Play Uncharted, all the Uncharted games. Mm-hmm. It's going to be as long as watching 5 seasons of The Sopranos.
Yeah.
It's essentially the same thing.
Yeah.
So it's like people don't even have like a conception of what sitting down to play a game even means in their head. Mm-hmm. It's like this weird abstraction where for us playing a game means maybe you're enjoying multiplayer. Maybe it's like Disco Elysium and it's essentially reading a goddamn book.
Yes.
So there's a lot of different ways, but it's like to people who don't, it's just this nebulous thing that they don't quite understand, and so it's not important.
Yeah.
Even though it's making billions of dollars. And even though there are labor disputes and sexual harassment allegations and all kinds of stuff that people at the Washington Post should be covering, especially with the resources of the Washington Post.
Right.
And it shouldn't be up to people working remotely for Kotaku to try and dig up.
Right.
Because when Kotaku emails Bethesda, they can roll their eyes. When the Washington fucking Post emails, Bethesda, that's different, right?
Yeah. I mean, they should be looking at people like Bloomberg, one of the biggest media outlets out there, and they have a gaming section, and I'm sure a lot of the other media outlets throughout the country do as well, and it's for them to kind of eliminate that other possible source of income is baffling, as as they say. So
I could go on and on about this, but I think it just comes down to people don't play games. They don't have that conception of what that means. Right. I keep using the word conception. I don't know if it's the correct word. But it's like they just don't know.
Yeah.
As simple as that sounds, as like, I think it really comes down to that. Okay, a quick recap on a story that we talked about a couple weeks ago. Proletariat has paused their union drive. So some background, Proletariat is a studio under Activision Blizzard. Yeah.
Yes.
And I believe they work on World of Warcraft. I don't think they're developing like their own games. I think they're a support studio. That could be 100% wrong. The Communications Workers of America said the group was no longer seeking a vote with the National Labor Relations Board. The CWA blamed Proletariat CEO Seth Savak, saying he followed Activision Blizzard's lead and took workers' concerns as personal attacks and held meetings that demoralized and disempowered the group. However, this is where things get kind of strange. Kat Dolan, who is an artist at Proletariat and who describes herself as pro-union, told Axios that that narrative is fabricated. According to Dolan, it was the worker-led committee that had shaken the group's confidence in organizing. This is something we discussed a few weeks ago, with one source telling Axios then, quote, "This is all being pushed faster than we've been able to process, what it actually means for our jobs, who it applies to, what the benefits are, and what the benefits are versus the risks," end quote. This is a messy situation. I don't want to speculate. I really have no idea what to say.
Yeah.
It's weird that it seems like so many places the union drives are like full steam ahead, and here there's like a bunch of speed bumps. It's like, okay, what's going on here? I'm not gonna speculate.
No clue.
This is why we need a Washington Post, damn it. Jason, get on this. Now. I
He
can't.
probably will.
Anyway, do we want to...
Yeah, we good. I'm good.
Are we good? All right. A man discusses the news, but not like the big news, the little news. Little bit. This is the Tidbits.
For my tidbits, it took so long. I don't know where they are anymore.
Oh, geez.
All right, here we go.
Sorry, I'm trying to be thorough.
I was going to report on this last week when we didn't have a podcast, but
My bad. All right.
No,
I'm not. Throw me.
I'm just saying the story's old. I'm saying the story is old.
What's the third shade?
Well,
how about Eagles? Talk to me about the Eagles.
Hold on. Speaking of one fish,
piece of shit.
two fish, red fish, blue fish. A pet goldfish has committed credit card fraud on someone's account, someone's Nintendo Switch account. The story was spotted by TechSpot, which in turn was spotted by a user over on ResetEra, we spoke about earlier. A Japanese YouTuber, Mutekumaru channel, has ran some interesting tests involving goldfish. They basically set up sensors inside of the fishbowl and a camera on the top facing down so that it can read the inputs. And so he's had the fish play a bunch of Pokemon games throughout, just on stream. And so that at one point, the fish that he was using beat Pokemon Sapphire in 3,195 hours, which is impressive for a goldfish, I'll tell you what. Well, recently, they were playing through one of the Scarlet or Violet on Switch. And while it was running, the game crashed while the fish was still streaming. And he wasn't home at the time because why would he just sit there watching his fish?
Sure.
Anyways, of course, the fish got to pressing buttons and ended up going to the eShop where they basically got to the settings menu and revealed not only his credit card info, but bought like $5 of like eShop money. Thankfully, of course, he had the email, alerts on. And so he was able to prevent the fish from doing any more harm. But some users got his information, which he fixed. But yeah, what a smart fish.
I think it'd be, I don't know if you guys remember that IT Crowd episode where they make fun of the piracy ads.
Yes.
And it's like the girl is at her computer and like an FBI agent shoots her in the back of the head. That'd be hilarious if it's like this fish committing credit card fraud. You just see like a SWAT team break in, just shoot the shit out of the fishbowl.
I'd imagine
Not
he
on
grabs
my
him,
watch.
throws him in the toilet.
Sayonara. Anyway, sorry. That's funny.
It's a good one. Now a sad one. Actress Anne Wershing has passed away, unfortunately. Anne Wershing, who she provided the voice for Tess in Last of Us. She also provided the mocap for her. She sadly passed away at the age of 45. She was diagnosed with cancer back in 2020, but continued to act through her illness.
It just sucks.
It does suck. Yep. It does suck.
There's just nothing good about
because she did some great work on 24 as well.
Yep.
All right, so that's it for the tidbits. But I got a very small NPD blurb. I was going to say NPR. NPD blurb. So let's get to it. Of course, taken verbatim from Matt Piscatello over on Twitter.
Guys?
Welcome back, Mr.
To
Piscatello.
the show.
The show 23 is coming out soon. Or 24.
Oh, man, I can't wait for baseball season.
Yeah, it's going to be great. U.S. consumer spending on video game content, hardware, and accessories totaled $7.6 billion in December of 2022, an increase of 2% when compared to a year ago. Hardware spending grew 16%, offsetting declines in both content, which was at negative 1%. Which was at 1%, and accessories, which was at 2%. Negative of the year before, whatever. 2022 spending totaled $56.6 billion. That's a lot of money. 5% below 2021 levels, despite growth in hardware and subscription content spending. Factors impacting 2022 spending included continued supply constraints on console hardware, a relatively light slate of new premium releases, and macroeconomic conditions. That is all for the NPDs.
I had a question, but it slipped my mind. Never mind.
Was it about money? Was it about video games? Because there's going to be a lot of video games next couple months.
Yeah.
A lot of games.
How do you... I wondered how that's going to impact things. Man, COVID's impact on the industry is just really interesting because not only do you have, jabronis like Mark Zuckerberg, who we thought all these people sitting at home playing games were going to last forever. Sorry, you're fired. Doing that shit. And then all these games get delayed.
Yes.
Now there's a bunch of games that are competing with one another that originally weren't going to be competing with one another.
That's correct. Yeah.
So it's like that's further ripple effect. So I don't know. I think that's all really fascinating. I don't know how it's really going to impact things. But Dead Space was like the first big release, AAA release this year, right?
Forspoken.
Oh, it was first. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, Forspoken came out last week. Well, no, Fire Emblem, 3 Houses.
Okay.
Or not 3, Engage.
But is there anything in February, or is it a lot of it start off in March and May?
Hogwarts Legacy, whether you like it or not, Hogwarts Legacy. Wild Hearts from EA Koei Tecmo. It's another Monster Hunter type game.
Okay.
Yeah.
So things will start.
And then March is Resident Evil 4.
Yeah. And Breath of the Wild 2 is May. So is Street Fighter 6. Starfield
and
is
something else. Starfield's the end of the year. I'm pretty certain.
Oh, is it end of the year? Oh, okay.
And then,
I thought it was early.
And then what is it called? Redfall's in May, which apparently is in rough shape. I hear.
Ugh, that's not good.
Not good. Not for Arcane, unfortunately.
Okay.
Very unlike them.
Alrighty. Follow us on Twitter and Facebook at The Gaming Discourse. Go to our YouTube channel, YouTube/Gaming Discourse. Patreon.com/The Gaming Discourse. And we will see you next week.
Bye-bye.